I want you to imagine for a moment that everything you've ever wanted, everything you've ever desired, everything you've dreamed about in the quiet moments before sleep finds you, is already yours. Not someday, not when you're worthy enough, not when the stars align or when you finally figure out the secret formula. Right now, this very instant. And the only thing, the single solitary thing standing between you and that reality is a paper-thin veil of belief. Not even belief, really, just a habit of thought. A pattern you learned so long ago you can't even remember learning it. What if I told you that your entire life, every circumstance, every relationship, every dollar in your bank account, every door that opened, and every door that slammed shut, was created by something so close to you that you've been looking right past it your entire existence? You know, I've spent my entire life studying the mind, not just the brain, that magnificent organ that fires electrical impulses and chemical reactions, but the mind, that invisible creative force that seems to exist both within you and far beyond the boundaries of your physical body. And what I discovered changed everything. Not just for me. For thousands upon thousands of people who were suffering, struggling, convinced that life was happening to them, that they were victims of circumstance, prisoners of their past, hostages to their environment. What I'm about to share with you isn't positive thinking. It's not about plastering a smile on your face while your world crumbles. It's not about affirmations you repeat robotically while your heart screams the opposite. This is about something far more fundamental, far more powerful, far more real than any of that surface-level nonsense. This is about the actual mechanism, the hidden law that governs every single aspect of your reality. And once you see it, truly see it, you can never unsee it. Your life divides into two distinct chapters, before this knowledge and after. Everything changes, not because the world changes, but because you finally understand how you've been creating your world all along. I need you to stay with me now, because what I'm about to reveal will challenge everything you think you know about how life works. It will contradict what your parents taught you, what society programmed into you, what every disappointment seemed to prove to you. But I promise you this. If you truly hear what I'm saying, if you let it sink past your intellectual understanding and into that deeper place where real transformation happens, nothing will ever be the same again. Nothing. Let me tell you something that might sound strange at first. Your conscious mind, that thinking, reasoning part of you that believes it's in charge, is not running your life, not even close. It's like a captain on a ship who thinks he's steering, but there's an entirely different force beneath the surface. A current far more powerful, actually determining where you end up. That force is your subconscious mind. And here's what most people never realize. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. It doesn't judge. It doesn't argue. It doesn't question. It simply accepts. And whatever it accepts, it expresses. Whatever is impressed upon it becomes expressed in your external world. This is the hidden law. This is what changes everything. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to effortlessly attract success while others work themselves to exhaustion and barely survive? Have you watched someone recover from an illness the doctors said was impossible while another person with the same diagnosis deteriorates? Have you seen relationships bloom in the most unlikely circumstances while seemingly perfect matches crumble? This isn't random. This isn't luck. This isn't God playing favorites. This is law. Impersonal, consistent, unwavering law. The law of subconscious manifestation. Your subconscious mind is like the most fertile soil imaginable. It will grow whatever seed you plant in it. It doesn't care if you plant roses or poison ivy. It doesn't care if you plant abundance or poverty. It doesn't care if you plant health or sickness. It simply grows what you give it. And here's the thing that will either liberate you or terrify you. You've been planting seeds your entire life, mostly unconsciously, mostly through repetitive thoughts and feelings you weren't even aware you were having. And your life right now, in this very moment, is the harvest of those seeds. Every bit of it. Now, before you start judging yourself, before you start thinking, well, I must have planted terrible seeds because my life is a mess. Stop. Just stop. That's not the point. The point isn't to look back and blame yourself. The point is to wake up right now. To realize that if you've been creating unconsciously, you can start creating consciously. If you planted those seeds without knowing what you were doing, Imagine what becomes possible when you plant with intention, with understanding, with full awareness of this law. I've seen miracles. I've witnessed transformations that would make skeptics weep. I've watched people heal their bodies, resurrect their finances, restore their relationships, and completely reinvent their lives. Not through struggle. Not through force. Not through years of therapy or willpower or grinding effort. Through understanding and application of this one principle, your subconscious mind is the creator of your circumstances, and you are the gatekeeper of your subconscious mind. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine your conscious mind as a gardener and your subconscious mind as the garden. Now, this garden is always growing something. It never rests. It never stops. Even when the gardener is asleep, the garden continues its work. If the gardener has been careless, if he's allowed weeds to take root, if he's scattered seeds without thinking, the garden will be chaos. But the very instant the gardener wakes up and realizes his power, everything shifts. He can start pulling weeds. He can start planting deliberately. He can start nurturing the plants he actually wants. And the garden, because it's designed to grow, will respond. Not because the garden suddenly became different, because the gardener finally understood his role. You are that gardener, and your life has been showing you, with perfect accuracy, what you've been planting. Not to punish you, not to mock you, but to teach you, to wake you up. To help you see the incredible power that's been yours all along. This is the moment. Right now. This is when everything changes. Because now you know. Now you understand. And you can never go back to unconscious creation once you've tasted conscious creation. The door has opened. The question is, will you walk through it? You see, most people treat their imagination like a luxury, something they'll get to when they have time, when life calms down, when things are finally perfect, but that's backwards. Your imagination isn't the dessert, it's the main course. It's the architect drawing up the blueprints before a single brick is laid. I want you to think about something right now. When was the last time you deliberately directed your imagination toward what you truly want? Not what you fear, not what you're trying to avoid, but what you genuinely, deeply desire. Most people spend hours every day imagining worst-case scenarios. They play out arguments that haven't happened. They rehearse failures. They visualize rejection, loss, embarrassment. And then they wonder why these things keep showing up in their lives. They call it anxiety. They call it being realistic. But what they're actually doing is praying for what they don't want. Your subconscious doesn't judge. It doesn't say, "Oh, this is a worry, so I won't create it." It simply accepts the feeling, the image, the assumption, and it goes to work making it real. It's the most loyal servant you'll ever have. It never questions your instructions, it just executes them. This is why I keep saying, you must guard your imagination like a sacred garden. Because everything grows there. The weeds of fear grow just as easily as the flowers of faith. And whatever you water with your attention, with your emotional energy, with your repetition, that's what will dominate the landscape of your life. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. But Joseph, you don't understand my situation. My problems are real. My limitations are real. I can't just imagine them away. And you're right. Your problems are real. But here's what you're missing. They're only real in this dimension of reality. They're real in the world of effects. But you're not meant to live in the world of effects. You're meant to live in the world of causes. You're meant to be the creator, not the created, the sculptor, not the stone. And when you understand this, really understand it, everything changes. Let me ask you something. When you plant a seed in the ground, do you dig it up every day to check if it's growing? Do you stand over it, worrying, fretting, demanding to see results? Of course not. You plant it, you water it, you give it sunlight, and then you trust the process. You trust the invisible intelligence in that seed to do what it was designed to do. Your subconscious mind works the same way. You plant the seed, the mental image, the feeling, the conviction of your desire fulfilled, and then you let it grow. You don't dig it up with doubt. You don't poison it with fear. You don't uproot it with impatience. You trust the creative power within you to bring it into manifestation in ways you cannot even imagine. But here's where most people fail. They plant the seed at night through their affirmations and visualizations, and then they dig it up the next morning with their worries and contradictions. They say, "I am prosperous," and then spend the rest of the day thinking, but I don't have any money. How will I pay my bills? This isn't working. That's not faith. That's not mental fertilization. That's sabotage. Your subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't judge your thoughts as good or bad, right or wrong. It simply accepts what you impress upon it and proceeds to express it in your world. If you impress it with lack, it will create lack. If you impress it with abundance, it will create abundance. It's completely impersonal, like the soil that will grow weeds just as readily as it will grow roses. This is why I tell you, be vigilant about what you accept as true. Guard your mind like you would guard your most precious possession, because it is. Every thought is a seed. Every feeling is water. Every word is sunlight. You are constantly growing something in the garden of your mind. The question is, what are you growing? If you've been planting thoughts of lack, I can't afford this, I'll never have enough, money doesn't come to me, then your subconscious has been faithfully producing a harvest of scarcity. It doesn't judge, it doesn't argue, it simply accepts what you plant and grows it into your experience. But here's the beautiful truth. You can change the garden anytime you choose. You can begin right now to plant thoughts of abundance, of worthiness, of inevitable success. And your subconscious will accept these seeds just as readily as it accepted the old ones. It has no loyalty to poverty. It has no investment in your struggle. It simply obeys the law of your own mental activity. I want you to think about a farmer for a moment. When a farmer plants corn, he doesn't stand in his field and worry whether the seeds will grow. He doesn't dig them up every day to check on their progress. He plants them with confidence, knowing that the soil, the rain, and the sun will do their work. He trusts the process because he understands the law of growth. You must approach your mental garden with the same confidence. When you plant a thought of prosperity into your subconscious mind, you don't need to obsess over how it will manifest. You don't need to force it or manipulate circumstances. You simply need to maintain the thought with feeling, water it with faith, and allow the creative law within you to bring it to pass. The subconscious mind works in darkness, just as seeds germinate beneath the soil where you cannot see them. There is an interval of time between planting and harvest. This is where most people fail. They plant a seed of success today, and tomorrow they're digging it up with thoughts of doubt, saying, "Nothing's happening, it's not working, I knew it wouldn't." This is like planting a seed in the morning and digging it up in the afternoon because you don't see a tree yet. Impatience destroys more dreams than almost anything else. You must learn to rest in the knowledge that what you have impressed upon your subconscious mind must, by law, come to fruition in your experience if you do not uproot it with contrary thoughts. The creative process always has a gestation period. Every farmer understands this. You don't plant corn on Monday and expect to harvest it on Friday. There is a season of planting, a season of growth, and a season of harvest. Your desires follow the same pattern. When a woman conceives a child, she doesn't check every day to see if the baby is formed yet. She doesn't panic in the second month because she can't hold her infant. She trusts the process. She knows that nature is working invisibly, silently, perfectly. She nourishes herself, rests, and prepares, and in due time, the child is born. Your subconscious mind works exactly the same way. Once you have planted the seed of your desire through feeling and conviction, your job is not to dig it up with doubt. Your job is to water it with faith, to nourish it with gratitude, and to protect it from the weeds of fear and anxiety. I've watched people sabotage magnificent demonstrations simply because they couldn't wait. They impressed their subconscious with a clear desire, felt it real, then 3 days later began to worry. Where is it? Why hasn't it happened yet? Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe it doesn't work for me. Every one of those thoughts is a seed of the opposite. Every doubt you entertain is an instruction to your subconscious to delay or cancel your good. There's a principle I want you to write on your heart. Once you have prayed, once you have felt your desire fulfilled, drop it completely. Live as though it is already done. Don't beg. Don't plead. Don't repeat your request anxiously 100 times a day. That's not faith, that's fear. True prayer is a single act of conviction. You establish the feeling once with clarity and intensity, and then you give thanks that it is already accomplished. From that moment on, whenever the desire comes to mind, you don't pray again, you simply give thanks again. This is one of the most misunderstood points in prayer. People pray the same prayer over and over, day after day, not realizing that repetition of the request is actually a declaration of doubt. When you pray repeatedly for the same thing, you're affirming that you don't have it. You're telling your subconscious mind that your desire has not been fulfilled. But when you pray once with conviction, and then simply give thanks afterward, you're living in the assumption that it's already done. You're living from the end. And that's when the subconscious mind goes to work to make it a reality. Let me give you an illustration. A woman once came to me who had been praying for years for financial freedom. Every night before bed, she would pray the same prayer, asking God to give her abundance, asking for her debts to be paid, asking for relief. And every morning she woke up still in debt, still struggling. She asked me why her prayers weren't being answered. I explained to her that she was actually praying from a consciousness of lack. Every time she repeated that prayer, she was impressing upon her subconscious the feeling of not having what she desired. Her prayer was a petition, not an acceptance. I told her to stop that prayer immediately. Instead, I instructed her to sit quietly one evening, get into a drowsy, relaxed state, and imagine the feeling of being completely free from debt. Not to beg for it, not to ask for it, but to feel it as if it were already true. I told her to imagine opening her bank statement and seeing a healthy balance. To feel the relief, the lightness, the freedom that comes with financial security. To feel gratitude for the freedom she now possessed. She did this once, with full conviction. And then I told her, every time the thought of money came to her mind after that, she was not to pray again. She was simply to say, "Thank you, Father, for my financial freedom," and let it go. Within 3 months, everything shifted. An unexpected promotion came through, an old debt was forgiven, a forgotten investment matured. The universe responded to the state of consciousness she had accepted as true. And when the money arrived, she wasn't surprised. She didn't question it. She didn't tell everyone she knew about the miracle. She simply accepted it with quiet gratitude, the way you accept the sunrise after a night of sleep. Because in her mind, it had already happened. The outer world was merely catching up to the inner world she had built. This is the secret most people miss. They think manifestation is about convincing the universe. It's not. It's about convincing yourself so deeply that the universe has no choice but to reflect your conviction back to you. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue. It doesn't debate. It accepts what you consistently feed it. And once it accepts something as true, it goes to work behind the scenes, orchestrating circumstances, people, and events to match that inner picture. You've experienced this, even if you didn't recognize it. Think about a time when you were absolutely certain something would go wrong. You just knew it. You felt it in your bones. And then, as if on cue, it did. Your car broke down. The meeting was canceled. The relationship fell apart. Was that bad luck? No. That was your subconscious mind fulfilling the order you placed with your persistent thoughts and feelings. The same mechanism that creates what you fear also creates what you desire. The subconscious doesn't discriminate. It simply says yes to whatever you impress upon it most deeply. So, here's what I want you to understand. You are not powerless in the face of your circumstances. You are not a victim of your bank account, your health, your relationships, or your past. You are the operant power in your own life. Everything you see around you is the outer reflection of the inner conversations you've been having with yourself. If you want to change what you're experiencing, you must first change what you're accepting as true within your own consciousness. Not tomorrow, not when conditions improve. Right now, this moment, in the invisible realm where all creation begins. You don't need permission. You don't need credentials. You don't need to be more spiritual, more educated, or more deserving. You only need to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled and persist in that assumption until it hardens into fact. This is why the farmer doesn't dig up his seeds every morning to check if they're growing. He plants them, covers them with soil, and walks away in faith. He knows the law is working beneath the surface, in the dark, where no eye can see. And in time, the harvest comes. You must do the same with your desires. Plant the seed of your wish fulfilled in your imagination. Feel it as real, then let it go. Don't constantly check your bank account wondering where the money is. Don't refresh your email waiting for the opportunity. Don't look in the mirror searching for evidence of change. These actions are rooted in doubt, and doubt is the weed that chokes the seed. Instead, live in the confidence that it is already done. Walk through your day as the person who already has what you desire. Not arrogantly, not with force, but with quiet, inner knowing. This is the faith that moves mountains. Let me tell you about a woman who came to one of my lectures years ago. She was deeply in debt, struggling to feed her children, and terrified of losing her home. She had no savings, no prospects, and no visible way out, but she listened to this principle, and she applied it with absolute commitment. Every night before sleep, she would lie in her bed and imagine the feeling of financial freedom. She didn't visualize specific dollar amounts or complicated scenarios. She simply felt the relief, the peace, the security of knowing all her needs were met. She felt herself relaxed, content, free from worry. She did this consistently, night after night, regardless of what her waking reality showed her. Within 3 months, a series of unexpected events unfolded. A distant relative she barely knew passed away and left her an inheritance. A government program she didn't know existed approved her for assistance. A neighbor offered her a job that paid twice what she'd been making. None of these things were predictable. None of them came through her own scheming or manipulation. They came because she changed her inner state, and the outer world rearranged itself to match. This is the secret most people never learn. They spend their entire lives rearranging the furniture in a burning house, moving from one strategy to the next, wondering why nothing ever really changes. They don't understand that the fire isn't in the furniture, it's in the foundation. You see, your subconscious mind doesn't care about your logic. It doesn't respond to your carefully constructed arguments about why you deserve better. It operates on a completely different frequency. It speaks the language of feeling, of assumption, of inner conviction. When you try to manifest from a place of lack, when you're constantly aware of what's missing, when you're desperately trying to fill a void, your subconscious registers that frequency. And it says, "Ah, you want more lack, more emptiness, more desperation? Let me give you experiences that match that vibration." This is why affirmations fail for so many people. They stand in front of the mirror saying, "I am wealthy," while feeling poor. They repeat, "I am loved," while feeling lonely. And they wonder why nothing changes. It's because the words mean nothing. The feeling is everything. Your subconscious doesn't hear your words, it feels your state. And if your state is one of wanting, of reaching, of trying to convince yourself of something you don't actually believe, then that's the instruction it receives. More wanting, more reaching, more trying. But when you shift your inner state, when you actually feel the reality of your desire is already accomplished, something miraculous happens. You stop broadcasting lack. You stop sending out that desperate frequency that pushes everything away. Instead, you begin to radiate the very thing you seek. And here's what people don't tell you. This shift doesn't require years of meditation or spiritual mastery. It can happen in an instant. The moment you genuinely accept something as true within yourself, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. I've watched this happen too many times to call it coincidence. People who've struggled with chronic pain for years suddenly experience relief when they finally stop resisting their condition and instead affirm their body's natural healing power. Individuals trapped in cycles of poverty break free the moment they genuinely feel wealthy from within, not when their bank account changes, but before it changes. This is where most people stumble. They want the evidence first. They want to see the money before they feel rich. They want the relationship before they feel loved. They want the success before they feel confident. But that's working against the fundamental laws of consciousness. Your subconscious mind is impersonal. It doesn't judge whether your beliefs are good or bad, helpful or destructive. It simply accepts what you consistently impress upon it and works tirelessly to bring those impressions into physical reality. This is why a person who constantly fears illness often becomes ill, while someone who maintains an unwavering conviction of health tends to remain healthy, even under challenging circumstances. Think of your subconscious as soil. It will grow whatever seeds you plant in it, whether they're seeds of abundance or seeds of lack, seeds of joy or seeds of suffering. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't say, "This is a negative thought, so I won't manifest it." It simply responds to the feeling, tone, and conviction behind your dominant thoughts. And here's the profound responsibility that comes with this understanding: you are always planting seeds. Every thought charged with emotion, every image you hold in your mind with feeling, every statement you make with conviction is a seed going into that fertile soil. The question isn't whether you're planting, but what you're planting. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between the seeds of wealth and the seeds of poverty. It doesn't judge whether your thoughts are constructive or destructive. It simply accepts what you give it and begins the process of manifestation. This is why two people can live in the same circumstances, even work at the same job, yet one prospers while the other struggles. The difference isn't in their environment, it's in the garden of their mind. I've counseled thousands of people over the years, and I can tell you that the most common tragedy I've witnessed is this: people spending their entire lives planting seeds of limitation while wondering why their harvest is so meager. They fill their minds with thoughts of, "I can't afford that, that's not for people like me, I'll never get ahead," and then they're surprised when their reality reflects these convictions back to them. But here's what fills me with hope. The moment you understand this principle, everything changes. You realize you're not a victim of circumstances, you're a gardener who's been planting the wrong seeds. And just as you planted those limiting thoughts, you can plant new ones. Just as you cultivated worry, you can cultivate faith. Just as you nourished fear, you can nourish courage. Let me give you a practical example that illustrates this perfectly. A woman once came to me deeply in debt, barely making ends meet. Every day, she would look at her bills with dread, feeling her stomach tighten with anxiety. She would say to herself, "I'll never get out of this hole. The debt just keeps piling up." Can you see what she was doing? She was watering the seeds of financial struggle with the intense emotion of fear and despair. I taught her to change her mental gardening practice. Instead of dwelling on the debt with fear, she began to contemplate financial freedom with feeling. Before sleep, she would imagine the feeling of being debt-free, the lightness, the relief, the freedom. She would look at her bills, and instead of panicking, she would affirm, "Divine abundance flows to me now. I am guided to perfect solutions." Within 2 weeks, a former colleague reached out with a freelance opportunity that paid exactly what she needed to clear her most pressing debt. A month later, she received a tax refund she'd forgotten about. Within 6 months, every single debt was paid off. Not through struggle, not through deprivation, but through the mysterious orchestration of her subconscious mind responding to her new mental imagery. Now here's what I need you to understand about this principle, and this is crucial. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you call big problems and small ones. It responds to the intensity of your feeling and the clarity of your mental image. A person worrying about parking finds no space. A person expecting a perfect spot drives right to one. Same mechanism, different scale. I've witnessed this truth demonstrated in the most profound ways imaginable. I knew a man diagnosed with a condition his doctors considered incurable. They gave him months to live. But this man understood something his physicians did not, that the same intelligence that created his body could heal it. Every night before sleep, he would enter a drowsy, receptive state and imagine his doctor congratulating him on his complete recovery. He would feel the handshake, hear the words, "I don't know how to explain it, but you're completely healthy," and accept this scene as real. He did this with the faith of a child and the persistence of a saint. 3 months later, his doctors were indeed at a loss to explain his complete recovery. The tumors had vanished, his blood work was perfect. They called it spontaneous remission. He called it the natural response of his subconscious mind to his habitual thinking. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue. It doesn't debate the validity of your instructions. It simply executes. This is why the quality of your internal dialogue matters more than any external circumstance you'll ever face. Think about this carefully. Every time you say, "I can't afford that," your subconscious accepts it as an instruction and begins organizing your reality around scarcity. Every time you say, "I'm not good with money," you're programming limitation into the very mechanism designed to create abundance for you. I've watched people sabotage million-dollar opportunities with a single habitual phrase. A woman once told me she'd been offered a business partnership that would have transformed her financial life. But the moment the opportunity appeared, her mind flooded with the phrase her mother had repeated for 30 years. "People like us don't get opportunities like that." She declined the offer. 2 years later, she was still working the same job she hated, still repeating the same phrase, still wondering why abundance eluded her. The tragedy isn't that she missed one opportunity. The tragedy is that her subconscious mind, following its programming faithfully, will continue to guide her away from every similar opportunity until she changes the instruction. Your subconscious is listening right now, this very moment. What are you telling it? What habitual phrases loop through your mind when you look at your bank account? What automatic thoughts arise when you consider your future? These aren't idle questions, they're diagnostic tools. Your current thoughts are literally constructing your future circumstances. The conversation you're having with yourself about money is creating your financial reality with the same precision that a blueprint creates a building. Here's what most people miss. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between a thought you think once and a thought you think 1,000 times. It responds to intensity and repetition. A thought charged with emotion and repeated consistently becomes a command that your subconscious must fulfill. This is why affirmations work when they're done correctly, and why they fail when they're mechanical. Simply repeating "I am wealthy" while your dominant feeling is anxiety about bills creates conflict, not manifestation. Your subconscious responds to the feeling tone, not just the words. This is the secret of effective prayer. When you pray, you must feel the reality of what you're claiming. You must enter into the mood times of the wish fulfilled. If you're praying for health, you don't beg or plead with some distant deity. You assume the feeling of being healthy right now. You imagine what it would feel like to wake up tomorrow morning filled with vitality and energy. You capture that feeling and sustain it. I've watched people pray for prosperity while radiating the consciousness of poverty. They use all the right words, but their inner feeling contradicts their outer petition. Then they wonder why their prayers go unanswered. Prayer isn't about convincing God to change his mind. Prayer is about changing your own consciousness, aligning your inner feeling with your desired outcome. Your subconscious doesn't understand the future tense. It only knows times now asterisk. When you say "I will be successful," you're actually programming delay and separation. But when you say "I am successful" and genuinely feel it, your subconscious accepts this as current reality and begins to manifest conditions that match this feeling. Think of your subconscious as a faithful servant who takes your orders without question. If you hand it confusion, it creates confused circumstances. If you hand it confidence and certainty, it creates corresponding conditions in your outer world. It doesn't judge whether your assumptions are good or bad, rational or irrational. It simply accepts what you genuinely feel to be true and proceeds to make it so. This is why two people can have the same opportunity, the same resources, the same starting point, yet produce completely different results. The difference isn't in their circumstances. It's in their consciousness. One person approaches the situation feeling capable and expectant. The other approaches it feeling doubtful and anxious. Their subconscious minds, responding to these different feeling states, produce entirely different outcomes. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the architect of them. This is why two people can hear the same news, face the same challenge, receive the same diagnosis, and have radically different experiences. One crumbles, the other rises. The difference is not in what happened to them. The difference is in the feeling they attach to what happened. You've seen this in your own life, haven't you? There was a time when you received disappointing news, and you spiraled. Your mind ran wild with worst-case scenarios. You felt helpless, defeated, exhausted, before the battle even began. And what happened? Things got worse. Doors closed. Opportunities vanished. It felt like the universe was against you. But then there was another time, a different challenge. This time, something inside you refused to break. You felt a quiet determination, a strange confidence that you would figure it out. You didn't know how yet, but you felt certain you would. And what happened? Solutions appeared. People showed up to help. Things worked out in ways you couldn't have predicted. Same person, different feeling, different result. This is not luck. This is not coincidence. This is law. Your feeling is the creative force that shapes your reality. It is the language your subconscious mind speaks. It is the signal you broadcast into the infinite intelligence that surrounds you. And here's what most people miss. Your feeling doesn't have to be based on current circumstances. In fact, it shouldn't be. If you only feel successful when success is already visible, you're working backwards. If you only feel abundant when your bank account is full, you've missed the entire mechanism of creation. The feeling must come first. You must generate the emotional state of your desire before the evidence appears. This is the secret every mystic, every sage, every spiritual teacher throughout history has tried to communicate. Feel it now, not when it happens. Now. Because your subconscious doesn't speak English or French or any language, it speaks feeling. It speaks conviction. It speaks the currency of assumption. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you're not playing pretend. You're not lying to yourself. You're aligning with a reality that already exists in the infinite field of possibility. You're selecting it, tuning into it, like changing the station on a radio. The station was always broadcasting. You just weren't dialed in. Let me tell you about a woman who came to me years ago. Brilliant woman, talented artist, but broke, constantly broke. Living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt, convinced that money was evil and that struggling was somehow noble. I asked her one question. How does it feel to be wealthy? She couldn't answer. She had no reference point, no feeling. She'd spent so many years resenting wealth, judging it, pushing it away, that she had no emotional blueprint for receiving it. So I gave her an assignment. Every night before sleep, she was to feel grateful for the wealth she now enjoyed, not the wealth she hoped for. The wealth she times had asterisk. She was to feel the relief, the freedom, the ease of having more than enough. She resisted at first. But I'll be lying, she said. I told her, you're already lying. You're lying every time you say, I can't afford it. You're lying every time you say, money doesn't grow on trees. You're lying because you are, by nature, infinite. You're lying because lack is the illusion, not abundance. She started the practice. Every night, feeling wealthy, feeling free, feeling grateful for money that hadn't yet appeared in her bank account. 3 weeks later, she received a commission, the largest of her career, out of nowhere, from someone who'd seen her work years ago and suddenly remembered her. Coincidence? No. Consciousness. She changed her inner state, and the outer world rearranged itself to match. This is how it works. This is how it has always worked. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't manipulate or scheme or force. You simply assume the state of the wish fulfilled, and the universe, your subconscious, moves heaven and earth to make it so. This is what separates those who manifest effortlessly from those who struggle endlessly. The ones who struggle are always in a state of wanting, begging, hoping. They say, I want money. Please, universe, give me money. And what does that state communicate? Lack, separation, the absence of the very thing they desire. But the master? The master says nothing. The master simply feels wealthy. Not tomorrow. Not when the check arrives. Now. In this moment, regardless of what the bank account shows, they walk in the consciousness of abundance. They feel rich. They think from wealth, not toward it. And here's what happens, and I've seen this thousands upon thousands of times. The moment you truly assume that state, the moment you stop begging and start being, your world rearranges itself. Opportunities you never noticed suddenly appear. People come into your life bearing gifts. Doors that were locked swing open as if by magic. It's not magic, it's law. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue. It doesn't question. It simply accepts the state you occupy and projects it outward as your experience. If you walk around feeling poor, worried, lacking, guess what you're going to experience? More poverty, more worry, more lack. Because that's the state you're broadcasting, and the subconscious mind is the most faithful servant you'll ever have. It gives you exactly what you assume to be true. But when you dare, and yes, it takes courage at first, when you dare to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled despite current circumstances, despite what your senses tell you, despite what your bank account or your relationships or your health looks like right now, when you hold that state with persistence, everything changes. The subconscious doesn't know the difference between a real experience and one vividly imagined. This is crucial. When you imagine with feeling, when you make it real in your mind's eye, your subconscious accepts it as fact. And once accepted as fact, it must externalize. It must become your reality. This is why I tell people, Stop looking at your current circumstances as proof of what's possible. Your current circumstances are nothing more than the outpicturing of your former states of consciousness. They're old news. Yesterday's thoughts made manifest. But here's where it gets exciting. The moment you shift your state, the very second you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you plant a new seed, and that seed must, by law, come to fruition. You might say, but I don't see any change yet. I've been assuming for days, maybe weeks, and my world looks the same. Let me tell you something that will set you free. There is always a lag in time between your assumption and its manifestation in the three-dimensional world, always. Think of it like planting a garden. You don't plant a seed today and expect to harvest fruit tomorrow. You plant the seed, you tend to it, you water it, and you trust the process. You don't dig up the seed every few hours to check if it's growing. That would destroy it. The same principle applies to your assumptions. When you plant a seed in the ground, something miraculous happens beneath the surface that you cannot see. The seed must first die to its former state before it can transform into something new. It breaks apart. It sends roots down into the darkness. All of this happens hidden from your eyes, but it is happening. Your assumption works the same way. The moment you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, something changes in the invisible realm of consciousness. Forces are set in motion. Rearrangements begin. The bridge of incidents starts forming, though you cannot yet see it. This is why persistence is not about forcing, it's about remaining faithful to your new state despite what your senses report. It's about not going back to the old assumption when the mirror of the world still reflects yesterday's image. Your senses will tell you that nothing has changed. Your bank account might show the same number. Your relationship status might look the same. Your body might appear unchanged. But I'm telling you, if you've truly assumed a new state, everything has already changed in the only place that matters, consciousness. And from that shift in consciousness, the physical world has no choice but to conform. Not because you're forcing it, not because you're manipulating reality, but because that's the law. That's how creation works. You see, most people are waiting for evidence before they believe. They say, show me the money, then I'll believe I'm wealthy. Show me the relationship, then I'll believe I'm loved. Show me the healed body, then I'll believe in my health. But that's backwards. That's living from the outside in. And it will never work. It can't work. Because the outer world is nothing but a reflection. It has no power to create. It can only mirror back what you've already accepted within. When you truly understand this, when you really get it at a deep level, everything changes. You stop begging, you stop pleading. You stop trying to convince the universe or God or whatever name you give to the creative power. Instead, you simply claim what is already yours. You appropriate it in consciousness. You wear it like a coat you've already purchased. And then you go about your day with the quiet confidence of someone who knows the check is in the mail. I've watched people transform their entire lives with this understanding. Not through years of struggle, not through complex rituals or endless affirmations, but through one simple shift. They stopped living in the old state and started living in the new one. A man came to me once, desperate about his failing business. He was working 18-hour days, stressed beyond measure, watching his bank account drain month after month. He wanted me to give him a special prayer, some magic words that would turn it all around. I told him, the problem isn't your business. The problem is the state you're living in. You're dwelling in the state of struggling businessmen. Every thought, every feeling, every action is reinforcing that identity. And the universe is simply giving you more of what you're claiming to be. He didn't like that answer at first. He wanted an external solution to an internal problem. But eventually, he understood. He began to practice living in the state of success. Not when the money came, not when the clients showed up, but immediately, right there in the midst of his current circumstances. Within 3 months, his business had completely turned around. New clients appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Old debts were unexpectedly forgiven. Opportunities emerged that he couldn't have planned or predicted. His rational mind couldn't explain it. There was no logical chain of cause and effect that connected his internal shift to these external changes. But his subconscious mind understood perfectly. It had been given a new blueprint, and it was now working tirelessly to make that blueprint a physical reality. This is the power you hold within you right now. your subconscious mind is not bound by the limitations that your conscious mind accepts. It doesn't know the word impossible. It doesn't understand failure. It only knows creation, manifestation, and the faithful execution of the patterns you impress upon it. When you truly grasp this principle, your entire relationship with life transforms. You stop begging the universe for crumbs. You stop living as a victim of circumstance. You stop believing that your happiness depends on external conditions changing first. Instead, you recognize yourself as the architect of your experience, the sculptor of your reality, the author of your story. The subconscious mind responds to feeling more than words. It responds to conviction more than repetition. You can say affirmations 1,000 times, but if underneath those words there's doubt, fear, and disbelief, you're impressing the wrong pattern. The subconscious accepts the dominant feeling, the prevailing emotional tone, not the surface statements. This is why I emphasize the importance of feeling your desire as already fulfilled. When you imagine yourself healthy, don't just picture health, feel the vitality coursing through your body. When you imagine prosperity, don't just see money, feel the freedom, the security, the relief. When you imagine love, don't just visualize a person, feel the warmth, the connection, the joy. The feeling is the creative force. The feeling is what impresses the subconscious. The feeling is what sets the law in motion. Many people fail here because they've spent years cultivating negative feelings. Worry has become their default state. Anxiety feels more familiar than peace. Lack seems more real than abundance. Their emotional habits have created deep grooves in consciousness, and these grooves keep attracting the same experiences over and over. But here's the magnificent truth. You can create new grooves. You can establish new emotional patterns. You can train yourself to feel differently, and when you do, everything changes. The process of emotional reconditioning is like learning to play a new instrument. At first, joy might feel awkward to you. If you've been practicing sadness for 20 years, happiness feels foreign. Your emotional muscles aren't accustomed to holding that vibration. But this awkwardness is not a sign that joy isn't natural to you. It's simply evidence that you're out of practice. I want you to understand something profound. Every emotion you feel is a skill. Worry is a skill you've mastered through repetition. Anxiety is a skill you've honed through practice. Fear is a skill you've perfected through dedication. And just as you've become an expert in these lower emotions, you can become equally masterful in higher ones. When you decide to feel differently, you're not pretending. You're not lying to yourself. You're not engaging in positive thinking divorced from reality. You're exercising the most fundamental freedom you possess, the freedom to choose your inner state regardless of outer circumstances. This is where most people stumble. They believe they must wait for circumstances to change before they can feel better. They say, I'll be happy when I get the promotion. I'll feel peaceful when my problems are solved. I'll feel abundant when money arrives. But this is backwards. This is trying to harvest before you've planted. The feeling must come first. The emotion is the seed. Your current circumstances are the harvest of seeds you planted weeks, months, or years ago through your habitual feeling states. If you want a different harvest, you must plant different seeds today. Let me give you a practical example. Suppose you desire financial abundance, but your dominant feeling is lack. Every time you think about money, you feel tension, worry, anxiety. You're planting lack seeds while hoping for an abundance harvest. It cannot work. The universe doesn't respond to your words or wishes. It responds to your vibrational frequency, which is determined by your feelings. Now, I'm not suggesting you deny your current reality. If your bank account shows a low balance, you're not going to pretend it shows something else. But you can choose how you feel about it. You can move from panic to peace. You can shift from hopelessness to expectancy. You can transition from fear to faith. You can awaken the dormant forces within you that have been waiting for your recognition, your activation, your command. This is not wishful thinking. This is not positive platitudes painted over harsh realities. This is the fundamental mechanism by which consciousness shapes experience, by which inner conviction becomes outer manifestation, by which the invisible becomes visible. Every great achievement in human history began as an unseen thought in someone's mind. Every invention, every discovery, every work of art, every movement that changed the world, all of it existed first in the realm of imagination before it materialized in the physical world. The Wright brothers saw flight before the first airplane left the ground. Edison saw electric light before the first bulb illuminated. King saw equality before the laws changed. They held the vision when there was no evidence, when circumstances contradicted, when others said it was impossible. And their subconscious mind, impressed with that clear mental image, moved heaven and earth to bring it into manifestation. You have this same power operating within you right now. The question is not whether it exists, the question is how you are using it. Are you impressing your subconscious with images of limitation or possibility? With scenarios of defeat or triumph? With expectations of lack or abundance? Your subconscious does not judge the images you give it. It does not say, "This is realistic" or "This is foolish." It simply accepts what you consistently think and feel as your instruction, as your blueprint, as your command. If you repeatedly think, "I can't afford this," your subconscious accepts that as direction and finds ways to make it true. If you consistently feel, "Nothing ever works out for me," your deeper mind takes that as its assignment and creates corresponding circumstances. But when you deliberately choose to think, "I am guided to the right opportunities," your subconscious begins scanning for those opportunities. When you feel, "Good things are coming to me," your inner intelligence orchestrates events to match that expectation. This is why the practice of mental imagery is so transformative. When you sit quietly and vividly imagine the outcome you desire not as distant fantasy but as present reality, you are giving your subconscious mind clear, concentrated instruction. See yourself living in that desired state. Feel the emotions you would feel if it were already accomplished. Hear the sounds, notice the details, experience the satisfaction as though it is happening now. This is not make-believe. This is not pretending. This is impressing your subconscious mind with the reality of your desire fulfilled. Your subconscious cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one vividly imagined with feeling. It accepts what you persistently feed it. When you do this night after night, you are building a new pattern in your deeper mind. You are creating a new track, a new groove. And your subconscious mind, being the obedient servant that it is, will move heaven and earth to bring this mental image into your physical reality. I have seen this work in the most remarkable ways. A woman came to me once, desperate for financial relief. She was drowning in debt, couldn't see a way out. I told her to stop focusing on the debt, stop rehearsing her poverty, and instead imagine herself debt-free. Every night before sleep, she saw herself burning the final bill, feeling the tremendous weight lift from her shoulders, experiencing genuine gratitude for her financial freedom. Within 3 months, an unexpected inheritance came through from a distant relative she barely knew, enough to clear every single debt and give her a fresh start. Coincidence? No. Consciousness externalizing itself. Her inner conviction created the outer condition. This is the law. It works whether you believe in it or not, just like gravity. But when you consciously cooperate with it, when you deliberately use it, you become a deliberate creator rather than a victim of circumstance. Now, here is something crucial that many people miss. You must remain faithful to your vision even when the outer world shows no evidence of change. In fact, especially when the outer world shows no evidence of change, this is where most people fail. They imagine for a few days, see no immediate result, and abandon the practice. But you must be different. You must be like the farmer who plants his seed and doesn't dig it up every morning to check if it's growing. He waters it, tends to the soil, and trusts in the natural law of growth. Your imagination is that seed. Your consistent assumption is the water and sunlight. And the harvest is absolutely certain if you don't abandon the process. Let me give you a concrete example that demonstrates this principle beautifully. There was a woman who came to one of my lectures years ago, desperate to change her financial situation. She was drowning in debt, working 2 jobs, and could barely afford to feed her children. Every day, her outer world screamed poverty at her. Every bill that arrived, every overdraft notice, every worn piece of clothing her children wore, all of it contradicted the wealth she desired. But she understood something crucial. She understood that her current circumstances were simply the harvest of her past thinking. And if she wanted a different harvest tomorrow, she had to plant different seeds today. So despite having only $17 in her bank account, She began to imagine from the feeling of financial abundance. Every night before sleep, she would feel the relief, the freedom, the security of having more than enough. She didn't imagine specific amounts or methods. She simply dwelled in the feeling of financial ease. Her friends thought she was delusional. "How can you feel wealthy when you're broke?" they asked. But she persisted. For weeks, nothing changed externally. The bills kept coming. The bank account stayed empty. But internally, something was shifting. She was becoming the person who had wealth, even before the physical evidence appeared. Then one day, she received a call from a distant relative she hadn't spoken to in over a decade. This relative had passed away and had left her a substantial inheritance enough to eliminate all her debt and provide a comfortable cushion for her family. Was this coincidence? Absolutely not. This was the law in action. Her sustained assumption of wealth created a bridge of incidents that brought her desire to pass. You don't need to know how it will happen. That's not your job. Your job is to assume it's done and let the bridge build itself. I've watched this principle transform countless lives. A man once wrote to me about his business. He was on the verge of bankruptcy. Creditors calling daily. Sleepless nights filled with anxiety. He came to one of my lectures and learned about assumption. That very night, instead of rehearsing his failure, he began to assume success. He didn't just hope for it, he lived from it mentally. He imagined his bank account restored, his debts paid, his business thriving. He felt the relief, the joy, the freedom of financial security. Within 3 weeks, a series of events unfolded that seemed completely random. An old client he hadn't heard from in years suddenly reached out with a major contract. A business associate recommended him to a company that became his biggest account. A payment he'd written off as lost arrived unexpectedly. None of these things were forced. He didn't chase them down or manipulate circumstances. They came to him because his assumption created the magnetic field that attracted them. This is how the law works. You don't push the river. You don't struggle and strain. You assume the wish fulfilled and let the universe rearrange itself to match your assumption. But here's what most people do wrong. They assume for a day, maybe a week, and then they abandon their assumption the moment they see contrary evidence. They look at their empty bank account and say, "See, it's not working." They check their phone for the call that hasn't come, and conclude the law has failed them. This is where persistence becomes everything. Your assumption must be sustained. It must become your dwelling place, not just a place you visit occasionally. You must return to it again and again, especially when the outer world contradicts it. Consider the person who assumes they are confident and self-assured. At first, this assumption might feel uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that don't quite fit. The old habit of self-doubt tries to reassert itself. But if they persist in their assumption, if they repeatedly return to the feeling of confidence, something remarkable happens. The assumption begins to feel natural. They start to notice opportunities they would have missed before. They speak up in situations where they once would have remained silent. And others begin to respond to them differently, not because they've changed externally, but because they're radiating a different assumption about themselves. This is the power of sustained assumption. It doesn't work through a single grand gesture. It works through patient, persistent return to the state you wish to embody. Every time you notice yourself slipping back into the old assumption, you gently redirect your attention to the new one. You feel it again, you wear it again, you live from it again. Many people fail here because they treat their new assumption like a coat they put on in the morning and take off at night. They assume their wish fulfilled during their meditation or prayer, but the moment they open their eyes, they return to assuming the old limitations. This divided approach produces divided results, or more often, no results at all. Your assumption must become your home, not your vacation destination. You must live there mentally. When circumstances arise that seem to contradict your assumption, you don't abandon it. You view those circumstances through the lens of your assumption. You interpret everything that happens as supporting evidence that your assumption is already fact. This doesn't mean denying physical reality. It means refusing to give physical reality the final word about your life. You acknowledge what is, but you give your primary allegiance to what you are assuming to be true. Your assumption becomes the filter through which you process every experience, every conversation, every event. I cannot stress this enough. The battle is won or lost in your consistency. A weak assumption, consistently held, will produce stronger results than a powerful assumption that you only visit occasionally. The person who assumes health for 5 minutes a day and assumes illness for the remaining hours will remain ill. The person who assumes prosperity momentarily but spends most of their time assuming lack will continue to experience lack. This is why your dominant mental attitude determines your experience, not your occasional positive thought, not your Sunday affirmations, not the vision board you glance at once a week. Your subconscious mind responds to the mental atmosphere you maintain consistently throughout your day. It takes the sum total of your habitual thinking and externalizes it as your circumstances. I've watched people sabotage their own demonstrations through inconsistency. They affirm abundance in the morning, then spend the entire day worrying about bills. They visualize health before bed, then spend their waking hours discussing their symptoms with anyone who will listen. They declare they are confident and successful, then immediately scroll through social media comparing themselves unfavorably to others. This divided house cannot stand. The subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, "But you only believe that for 10 minutes today." It simply accepts the predominant impression, the mental state that has the most weight, the most frequency, the most emotional intensity. If fear occupies your mind more than faith, your subconscious will produce experiences that match your fear. If doubt has more residence time than conviction, doubt will manifest in your world. This is why I emphasize the importance of mental discipline. You must become the guardian of your inner world. You must monitor your thoughts the way a careful gardener monitors their garden, removing weeds the moment they appear, protecting tender shoots of new assumptions, nurturing the mental states that align with your desired reality. Consider the biblical teaching, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Notice it doesn't say, "As a man occasionally thinks" or "As a man wishes he could think." It speaks of habitual thought, the consistent dwelling place of your mind. Your heart, in scriptural terms, represents your subconscious mind, and whatever predominates there will manifest in your experience. The magnificent truth hidden in this principle is that you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to maintain your assumption 24 hours a day without a single wavering thought. What you need is consistency, returning to your assumption again and again until it becomes more natural to you than the doubts that challenge it. The subconscious mind works through the principle of predominance. It doesn't respond to the occasional positive thoughts surrounded by habitual negative thinking. It responds to the mental atmosphere you most consistently maintain. Think of it like tuning a radio. You don't need to hold the dial in the exact position every single second. You just need to return to the station often enough that it becomes your default setting. I've watched people torture themselves trying to maintain perfect mental discipline, monitoring every thought, punishing themselves for every doubt, treating their minds like maximum security prisons. This approach always fails, because it creates the very tension and strain that blocks manifestation. You cannot force the subconscious mind into submission. You can only persuade it through gentle, persistent repetition. When a doubt arises, and doubts will arise, you don't need to panic or see it as evidence of failure. Simply acknowledge it without resistance, and gently redirect your attention back to your assumption. It's exactly like training a puppy. When the puppy wanders away, you don't punish it or declare the training a failure. You simply call it back, again and again, until returning to you becomes its natural inclination. The power isn't in the intensity of your belief in any single moment. The power is in the consistency of your return to that belief. A man who assumes prosperity 100 times a day with occasional doubts will manifest infinitely more than a man who tries to force 1 hour of perfect assumption surrounded by 23 hours of worry. This is why I teach you to saturate your mind with your assumption during specific periods, morning, night, and whenever you remember during the day. These are not the only moments when manifestation happens. They are the moments when you deliberately reinforce the assumption that your subconscious mind will continue working on, even when your conscious attention wanders elsewhere. The subconscious never sleeps. It doesn't take breaks. It doesn't clock out when you're distracted or doubting. It continues operating on the last dominant impression you gave it. This is why a single moment of true conviction can outweigh hours of wavering hope. Quality of impression matters more than quantity of time spent thinking about it. Let me be clear about what I mean by quality. When you assume your wish fulfilled with such naturalness that it feels like a memory rather than a fantasy, you have achieved quality. When the feeling is so authentic that your body responds as if the event were actually happening, you have impressed your subconscious deeply. This is not pretending. This is not wishful thinking. This is the disciplined use of imagination to create a specific emotional state that your subconscious accepts as instruction. You might wonder how long you need to sustain this state. The answer is both simple and complex. You need to sustain it long enough for it to become the dominant impression. For some, this happens in moments. For others, it requires persistent return to the state over days or weeks. The variable is not the technique but the depth of your conviction and the absence of conflicting assumptions. Think of your subconscious mind as soil. You plant a seed, your assumption. If you plant it firmly and leave it alone, it will grow. But if you keep digging it up to check on it, if you plant contradictory seeds beside it, if you flood it with doubt or starve it with neglect of feeling, the seed cannot develop properly. Your job is to plant the seed with feeling, water it with periodic return to the wish fulfilled, and then allow the natural process to unfold. This is where most people fail. They cannot leave the seed alone. They assume their wish fulfilled in the morning, then spend the afternoon assuming its opposite. They feel the joy of the wish fulfilled at night, then wake up and immediately return to the consciousness of lack. This is not persistence. This is contradiction. And the subconscious, receiving mixed signals, produces mixed results or no results at all. You must come to your meditation with a settled conviction, not hope, not wishful thinking. Conviction. You must know, with the same certainty that you know your own name, that what you are impressing upon your subconscious mind is already an established fact in the invisible realm of consciousness. I have seen people pray for prosperity while clutching their wallets in fear. I have watched them affirm health while obsessively checking their symptoms in the mirror. They wonder why their prayers go unanswered, why their affirmations fall flat. The answer is simple: they are divided against themselves. Let me give you a principle that will change everything if you truly grasp it. Your subconscious mind does not debate, it does not argue, it does not question the validity of what you impress upon it. It simply accepts and expresses. If you impress fear, it expresses circumstances that match that fear. If you impress confidence, it expresses circumstances that match that confidence. This is why Jesus spoke so often about faith. Not blind faith, not irrational faith, but the kind of faith that is actually conviction, a deep inner knowing that what you have claimed in consciousness must, by law, appear in your experience. When you go to your quiet time, to your meditation, you must leave the world of effects behind. You must stop looking at the present circumstances as though they were the final word. The present circumstances are simply the outpicturing of yesterday's thoughts, yesterday's beliefs. They have no power to determine tomorrow unless you continue to give them that power through your attention and acceptance. This is the great turning point for most people. They pray for a new condition while simultaneously accepting the old one as permanent. They affirm abundance while believing in their hearts that poverty is their destiny. And then they blame God, or fate, or the universe for their continued struggle. But the law is exact. The law is impersonal. The law does not play favorites. It operates with mathematical precision for everyone, always, without exception. You might say, "But Dr. Murphy, what about when I tried before and nothing happened?" Listen to what you're actually telling me. You tried times before asterisk. You operated from the consciousness of times before asterisk. And that consciousness was filled with doubt, with fear, with the belief that it might not work. The law responded perfectly to that consciousness. It gave you exactly what you were impressing upon your subconscious mind, which was uncertainty, which was doubt, which was the feeling of lack. You see, you cannot fool your subconscious mind. You cannot speak words of faith while feeling doubt and expect the law to respond to your words. The law responds to feeling. The law responds to conviction. The law responds to the actual state of consciousness you are in, not the state you pretend to be in. This is why I say to you over and over again, feeling is the secret, not thinking, not wishing, not hoping, not trying, feeling. When you feel it real, when you feel the reality of your desire as though it were already manifested, you are impressing that reality upon your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind, being one with the infinite creative power of the universe, must bring it into manifestation. This is not psychology. This is not positive thinking. This is fundamental spiritual law. This is the way creation works. This is the mechanism by which the invisible becomes visible, by which the formless takes form, by which consciousness becomes reality. Every single thing you see around you, every building, every car, every book, every invention, existed first as an idea in someone's mind. It existed first as consciousness, before it could exist as reality. Your desire exists right now in consciousness. It exists in the invisible realm. Your job is not to create it from nothing. Your job is to accept it in consciousness, to feel it real, to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. When you do that, the creative power of your subconscious mind brings it from the invisible into the visible, from the subjective into the objective, from imagination into manifestation. This happens according to law. This happens according to principle. This happens with absolute certainty when the conditions are met. You're not waiting for luck. You're not hoping for a miracle. You're engaging with a law as reliable as the law of gravity. The seed you plant in your mind must produce the harvest in your experience. There is no other possibility. The law is exact. This is where faith becomes practical. Faith is not blind belief. Faith is confidence in the law. Faith is the assurance that what you have accepted in mind must manifest in form. You don't have faith in your imagination alone. You have faith in the principle that governs all manifestation. When you place a seed in fertile soil, you have faith that it will grow. Not because you believe really hard, but because you understand the principle of growth. You know that when the conditions are right, the seed must sprout. The same principle governs your mental world. When you impress an idea upon your subconscious mind with feeling, with acceptance, with conviction, that idea must externalize. It must take form in your world. The law requires it. This is the great secret that has been taught throughout the ages in different languages, different symbols, different traditions, but the principle remains the same. Consciousness is the only reality. Your consciousness, your state of awareness, determines your experience. Change your consciousness, and you change your world. Not someday, not eventually. Immediately. The moment you shift your inner state, the outer world begins to rearrange itself to match. Sometimes the changes are visible immediately. Sometimes they unfold gradually. But the process begins instantly. Every time you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are activating the law. You are setting forces in motion. You are commanding your subconscious mind to produce the corresponding results. And your subconscious mind never fails. It cannot fail. It must respond. It must create circumstances, events, and experiences that match your dominant mental states. This is why your inner conversations are so critically important. This is why your habitual thoughts determine your destiny. You cannot think one way and experience another. It is impossible. The law does not permit it. If you constantly think thoughts of limitation, you will experience limitation. If you habitually dwell on problems, problems will multiply. If you rehearse failure in your mind, failure will appear in your world. But when you think from the end, when you live in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, when you assume the consciousness of your desire already manifested, the corresponding reality must appear. This is law. This is principle. This is the way consciousness operates. And when you understand this law, you stop resisting it. You stop fighting the very mechanism designed to serve you. The reason most people fail in their attempts to change their lives is simple. They work against the law instead of with it. They try to force the outside world to bend to their will while maintaining the same inner consciousness that created their current circumstances. It's like planting seeds of weeds while praying for roses. The garden doesn't care about your prayers, it responds to what you plant. So what do we plant? We plant through feeling, through assumption, through the quiet, persistent acceptance of our wish fulfilled. I've watched people transform terminal diagnoses. I've seen bankrupt individuals rebuild fortunes. I've witnessed the lonely find profound love. Not through miracles that defy law, but through miracles that obey it. Each one of them did the same thing. They changed their inner conversation before the outer evidence changed. They felt wealthy before the money came. They felt healthy before the symptoms disappeared. They felt loved before the person arrived. And because they sustained that feeling, because they lived from that assumption, the outer world had no choice but to reorganize itself to match. This isn't positive thinking. Positive thinking is standing in poverty while saying, "I'm rich," with your lips, while your heart contradicts every word. This is positive being. This is inhabiting the consciousness of your desire so completely that it becomes more real than your current circumstances. Your present situation is nothing but the echo of yesterday's consciousness. If you don't like the echo, you must change the sound you're sending out. And you change that sound not through effort, but through awareness. Through understanding what you are, consciousness expressing itself through human form. You are not trying to get God to give you something. You are God awakening to what you already are. When you know this, truly know it, your entire approach to life transforms. You stop begging, you stop manipulating, you stop forcing. You simply assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled and let the law do what it has always done, manifest your consciousness into form. Now, let me address something that confuses many students of this law. They ask, if everything is consciousness, if I am creating my world, then what about other people? What about their free will? Am I controlling them? This question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what consciousness truly is. You are not controlling anyone. You are selecting which version of them you encounter. Every person in your world exists in infinite states simultaneously. Your mother exists as supportive and critical, loving and distant, healthy and ill, all at once in the quantum field of possibility. Your employer exists as generous and stingy, appreciative and dismissive. Your beloved exists as committed and distant, passionate and cold. Which version appears in your world? The one that corresponds to your assumption about them. When you change your concept of a person, you do not change them, you change which version of them you experience. You tune to a different frequency where a different aspect of their infinite being is expressed toward you. This is why two people can have completely opposite experiences with the same individual. One person encounters a helpful, kind soul. Another encounters a difficult, obstinate personality. Same person, different assumptions, different experiences. You are not violating anyone's free will. You are exercising your own divine right to select which aspect of the infinite you experience. Think of it like this. A radio station is broadcasting on its frequency regardless of whether you tune in. It does not change because you select it. But your experience of music or silence depends entirely on where you set your dial. You do not control the station. You control your reception. This understanding liberates you from the belief that you must convince, cajole, or manipulate others into behaving as you wish. You need only adjust your own consciousness, and the corresponding behavior appears in your experience automatically. I have seen this demonstrated thousands of times. A woman convinced her employer was unfair suddenly finds that same employer treating her with respect and generosity the moment she changed her inner conviction about him. This is not theory, my friend. This is not wishful thinking or positive platitudes. This is the actual mechanism through which your world operates. Every person in your life is there because of the state of consciousness you hold. They are not the cause of your experience, they are the effect of it. When you truly grasp this principle, you stop trying to change people and you start changing yourself. And when you change yourself at the level of consciousness, the entire world around you shifts in response. I once counseled a man who was convinced his business partner was dishonest and trying to cheat him. He spent months gathering evidence, consulting lawyers, preparing for confrontation. His health deteriorated. His sleep vanished. His relationship with his family suffered. Then one evening, exhausted and desperate, he came to me. I asked him a simple question. What quality in yourself are you projecting onto this partner? He was shocked. He insisted the partner was truly dishonest, he had proof. But I pressed him to look within. After much resistance, he finally admitted that he himself had been dishonest in small ways throughout his life. He had cut corners, misrepresented facts, justified little deceptions. The partner was simply mirroring back to him his own suppressed guilt and self-judgment. I instructed him to spend 30 days affirming, I am completely honest and transparent in all my dealings. I see honesty and integrity in everyone around me. He was skeptical, but he was also desperate enough to try. Within 2 weeks, the partner approached him with a completely transparent proposal that actually benefited both of them more than the original arrangement. Within a month, they had restructured their entire business relationship on a foundation of mutual trust and openness. The partner had not changed, the man's consciousness had changed, and therefore his experience of the partner transformed completely. This is the law, operating with absolute precision. You cannot experience in another what you do not first hold in consciousness yourself. The world is your mirror, reflecting back to you the sum total of your beliefs, assumptions, and inner convictions. And this mirror reflects without judgment, without bias, without exception. It shows you precisely what you are being in consciousness. When you look into the mirror of your world and see lack, limitation, or difficulty, you are not seeing an external reality acting upon you. You are seeing your own consciousness externalized. The error is not in the mirror. The error is in what you are bringing to the mirror. This is why changing external conditions without changing consciousness is futile. It is like trying to change your reflection by manipulating the mirror. You can paint the mirror, you can break it, you can turn away from it, but when you look into any mirror, you will see the same reflection, because you have not changed what is being reflected. The person standing before the mirror must change for the reflection to change. Your employer, your spouse, your neighbor, your circumstances, these are all mirrors. They reflect back to you your dominant mental attitude. When you change that attitude, when you transform your consciousness, the reflection must change. This is law, and law cannot be broken. I have seen individuals spend years trying to change others, trying to force external conditions to conform to their desires, while maintaining the same consciousness that created the unwanted conditions in the first place. This is the definition of futility. You cannot experience harmony in your relationships while maintaining a consciousness of discord. You cannot experience prosperity while maintaining a consciousness of lack. You cannot experience health while maintaining a consciousness of disease. The outer must reflect the inner. This is not theory, this is the fundamental structure of reality. Consider a woman who complains that everyone takes advantage of her. She sees herself as victimized, imposed upon, exploited. And indeed, her experience confirms this belief. Everywhere she turns, people seem to take from her, use her, disregard her boundaries. She believes the problem is with other people. She believes she simply attracts selfish individuals. But the truth is far different. She holds in consciousness a belief of herself as one to be taken advantage of. She assumes this role, she expects this treatment. And the law, ever faithful, brings her experiences that match her assumption. What happens when she changes her consciousness? When she begins to assume that she is valued, respected, honored, when she feels in imagination what it is like to be treated with dignity and consideration? The external world must reorganize itself to reflect this new assumption. The people around her will change their behavior, or they will leave her life and be replaced by individuals who reflect her new consciousness. The mirror always shows what stands before it. You cannot force this change in others through argument or pleading. You cannot manipulate people into treating you better through clever strategies or emotional appeals. These approaches work from the outside, and all lasting change happens from within. When you change your inner conversations, when you revise the mental scripts you've been rehearsing, when you assume the consciousness of someone who is loved, respected, and valued, the world has no choice but to conform to this new assumption. I have seen people spend years in therapy trying to understand why certain patterns repeat in their relationships. They analyze their childhood, dissect every interaction, create elaborate theories about attachment styles and trauma responses. And while understanding can be valuable, it often becomes another form of resistance, another way of avoiding the simple truth that you are creating everything through your assumptions about yourself. The woman who constantly attracts unavailable partners doesn't need to understand why. She needs to change the assumption that creates this pattern. The moment she begins to assume that she is desired by emotionally available, committed individuals, that she is worthy of genuine love and partnership, her reality must shift to reflect this new consciousness. The unavailable people will lose interest or reveal their true nature early, and new people who match her assumption will enter her experience. This is not positive thinking. This is not affirmations. This is a fundamental change in who you assume yourself to be. When you truly assume a new state, you don't need to convince yourself of it repeatedly. You simply are it. The assumption becomes as natural as breathing. You stop monitoring whether it's working because it never occurs to you that it wouldn't work. Someone who assumes they are loved doesn't wonder if they are lovable. Someone who assumes they are respected doesn't question whether they deserve respect. The bridge of incidents will appear. Events will unfold that you could never have orchestrated through conscious effort. Your assumptions become the silent architecture of your reality. They operate beneath conscious awareness, organizing your perceptions, your actions, your emotional responses. This is why trying to change your life through action alone is exhausting. You're building on a foundation that contradicts what you're trying to create. I've watched people spend years networking, attending seminars, learning new skills, all while carrying the assumption that success belongs to others. And then I've watched someone else walk into the same room with a different assumption and attract opportunities effortlessly. The difference wasn't talent, it wasn't charisma, it was the invisible organizing principle they carried within them. When you change your assumption, you don't need to figure out the how. That's the revelation that liberates you from strategic thinking. The how is none of your business. Your business is the assumption itself. Think about falling asleep. You don't consciously orchestrate the transition from waking to sleeping. You assume the feeling of sleepiness, you relax into it, and sleep comes. If you tried to force it, if you monitored every breath and analyzed every thought, you'd create insomnia. Manifestation works the same way. You assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you persist in that assumption, and the bridge of incidents appears. The moment you start questioning how it will happen, you've stepped out of the assumption. This is why I say live from the end. Not toward the end, but from it. There's a world of difference. Living toward the end keeps you perpetually in pursuit, always reaching, never arriving. Living from the end means you've already arrived. You're simply allowing the outer world to catch up with your inner conviction. The greatest block to manifestation isn't lack of technique. It's the refusal to give up control. People want to see the path before they commit to the assumption. They want guarantees. They want to know that their assumption will lead to a result they can predict. But life doesn't work that way. The creative power within you is far more intelligent than your conscious planning. It orchestrates circumstances you could never imagine. It brings together events, people, and opportunities in ways that defy logic. When you surrender your desires to this infinite intelligence, you're not abandoning responsibility. You're acknowledging a profound truth. There are forces at work beyond your comprehension, orchestrating outcomes more magnificent than your finite mind could design. Think about the last time something didn't work out the way you planned, only to discover later that the disappointment led you to something far better. That wasn't coincidence. That was infinite intelligence redirecting your path because it could see what you couldn't. Your conscious mind operates in a tiny sphere of awareness. It knows what it's experienced, what it's learned, what it can logically deduce. But the subconscious mind is connected to universal intelligence. It has access to all knowledge, all wisdom, all creative possibilities that have ever existed or will ever exist. When you plant your desire as a seed and release it with faith, you allow this greater intelligence to work through channels you don't even know exist. You might think you need a specific person to give you a job, but infinite intelligence knows about an opportunity 3 states away that's perfect for you. You might believe you must meet your life partner at a particular event, but the universe is arranging a chance encounter at a coffee shop next Tuesday. This is why attachment to specific methods creates resistance. You're essentially telling infinite intelligence, I know better than you how this should happen. You're limiting unlimited power to your limited perspective. The practice is simple but requires genuine faith. State your desire clearly, feel it as already accomplished. Then release it with these words, I let go and let God. Infinite intelligence knows the way. I trust the process completely. This isn't passive resignation. After you release your desire, you remain alert to guidance. You follow your intuition. You take inspired action when opportunities present themselves. But you stop forcing, manipulating, and desperately trying to control outcomes. I've watched people exhaust themselves trying to make things happen through sheer willpower, only to fail. Then, when they finally surrendered and trusted, the very thing they wanted manifested effortlessly, often through completely unexpected channels. Your job is to be clear about the destination, not to micromanage the journey.